new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire, the no-show. Who set you back because they didn't show up on day one, or day two, or ever again. And now your product launch is delayed because you're talking to alien abduction podcasters to track them down. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can help make sure your next hire sticks. In fact, businesses who use LinkedIn are 24% less likely to reopen a role in the next 12 months. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino Ciao. A gift from Italy to your home. San Pellegrino Ciao is a flavored sparkling water made with real fruit juice, finished with a pinch of Sicilian salt for a perfectly balanced taste. So which flavor will you choose? Peach, lime, blood orange, cherry, or maybe the all-new limoncello? Crafted in Italy with 0 grams of added sugar. San Pellegrino Ciao. Buy it now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, the podcast for all things neurodivergence. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and professional speaker, and I'm happy to be your host through the wild trails of the neurodivergent world.
And I'm Jake Noonan, educational coach and humanities teacher, your co-host and producer, and I'm thrilled to help share the stories and the experiences of wonderful people in the world of neurodiversity.
We're really excited for today's guest, which we are going to say a lot because we're always really excited about every guest we get. So let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nerding Out on Neurodiversity. I am your host, Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist, professional speaker, published author, podcast host, obviously, and wearer of many hats. I'm here, as always, with my buddy and co-host, the Gerald to my Hey Arnold, Mr. Jake Noonan. Say hi, Jake.
Hey, everybody. Great as always to be here. Dr. Matt, Hey Arnold was one of my favorite shows growing up, and I don't know if you know that.
I mean, obviously. I mean, what gifted kid didn't watch Hey Arnold and go, I want that bedroom?
Oh, yeah.
So with the window and like, he was so cool. He was like, he wore a kilt. And it was just like, yeah. I mean, just so top.
And his little tiny hat.
Little tiny hat, bloop, right?
And not even caring that he had a football head.
Yeah. Well, and then Stoop Kid's going to leave his stoop, right? I mean, that is probably the
Pigeon Man. Oh, so many things.
A surprisingly deep show too. Like, very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Really good. So we have another international guest because we're very fancy.
Ooh.
In fact, a recent award winner from our friends at the World Gifted Conference awarded two of my favorite people in the entire world, Tyler and Orla, with, was it young gifted professional?
Emerging leaders,
yes. So let's talk to our emerging leader. Orla, welcome to the pod. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's great to be here. And Jake and I already had some great chats about animals before you got on as well. I gotta say, I also loved Hey Arnold as a child. We actually did get kind of some good Nickelodeon stuff in Ireland. Maybe 10 years after you were watching it, but we did get it eventually.
Better late than never, you know. Why don't they just use the internet? That exists now, you know. Oh, man. So I think we should tell our origin story. Orla, do you think that's
okay?
So let's jump back in the time machine. It is the summer of 2022, and I've been asked to keynote at the European Council of High Ability Conference, which was in Den Haag, which, as I'm still trying to convince my dad, is not Amsterdam. He's like, you were in Amsterdam. I was like, no. I was in another city nearby called Den Haag. He's like, so Amsterdam. I'm like,
almost, but not quite.
Right.
And I think we should also say that, like, this was one of the first in-person gifted conferences that a lot of us had been to post-COVID.
Oh yeah, the energy was like very like spring break. Like we've been cooped up inside for 2 years, and now we get to go back outside and see our friends.
Yeah,
the good gifted conferences kind of read like summer camp.
Oh, absolutely. No, you're like having so much fun. And then especially like, you're coming back and then, maybe you feel like the cool kid because some people who are at the conference, the years prior, you're seeing people you haven't seen in a year. Sometimes the food is not that great depending on the conference. That's kind of summer camp-esque as well.
Right. I got into my really lovely routine. At the hotel, I would have my bowl of fruit and then the poffertjes, the little pancakes. That plus like the high quality European coffee. I was happy as a clam. But like the other Americans were like, "Where's the real breakfast?" I'm like, "Okay, you guys." But it's funny because like as someone who grew up on the Jersey Shore, they kept referring to Den Haag as a beach town. And I was like, I see a historic city, I see a castle, I see no beach. Where's the beach? And yet at the last night of the conference, we all trucked up to the beach and there was a beach party.
Beaches are gorgeous. The beaches are so nice in Den Haag.
So nice. And of course, I had to like run down, put my feet in the water. I was like, I've been here for a week. How did I not see this yet? And then as the night goes on and the wine continues to flow, I turn around at one point and I meet the fabulous Orla. And I thought to myself, well, this is a person that I'm glad I get to know. Little did I know that we would then close down the place where we had the party, walk down the boardwalk to an all-night dueling pianos bar.
Ooh, those are the best.
It was a strange bar, but it was not a short walk either. And like Matt and I, who had met maybe 2.5 hours prior, we were leading the charge. We were like, we're all going. And if you're not coming, that's fine. We're still going to this bar, and because it was the place that was open in Den Haag.
Yeah. And then they were like, "Oh, it's this much for the cover." And I was like, well, this is where the night just crashes to a halt, because who wants to pay like a 20 euro cover to go there? And Orly just goes, "I got this." And he walked up to the bouncer, and then it was like 50 euro for all of us to walk in. I'm like, how did you do this?
I think I convinced them. I was like, I'm going to bring, we had accumulated like genuinely maybe 15 people or something. And I said, I'm bringing 15 people in. We're going to have this many drinks. We're going to spend, this much money. Like, I think it's worth it to your establishment to have these people here. Like, I think these people are at a conference. There's been no conference post-COVID. We're all ready to spend money. And I think they waived the cover charge.
And then we did go and spend it.
And we did go in then, and spend the money. Yeah. I like how our origin story is involving like just like going out and having fun.
Well, and do you remember that we tried to do the lift from Dirty Dancing?
Of course I do. I was wondering, are we going to talk about that on the podcast?
Did you succeed?
Okay, we did actually semi-succeed, in fairness. And that was also Matt's fault, because Matt, I think that song came on and Matt said something like, when I was in high school, I used to be able to do this lift.
Yeah.
And so I said, great. Hope you're limber, ready, and hope your back is in the same shape that it was when you were in high school, because we're going to do this. And so he did succeed. He did lift me really high up. But like, I didn't have the core strength then, I'd say, to have held myself perfectly in line. But that was a real bonding moment for us. And that was kind of toward not even the end of the conference. I think there was still like 2 more days of talks.
Yeah.
So after that, we were just kind of buddies. And like we did bond as well over talking about a lot of the work that, Matt was doing. And I'm so interested in all of the work that he talks about directly. It's so person focused. It's so centered on making these kids feel seen and heard and validated in all of their feelings. And I'm a lot about that as well. So that was another big thing that we did bond over that in between the Dirty Dancing lift and taking people to the nightclub.
Yeah.
What happens with the Dirty Dancing lift, though? Because you only got like halfway through.
No, he lifted me.
Matt's holding you and...
He lifted me up. Everyone cheered. It's on video. And then I returned to the ground perfectly fine. Nobody was injured. And we just died laughing for like the next, I think, 25 minutes. I think I said, just do it. I don't care.
But it was just such a beautiful moment of like, we can do this. Can we do this? I think we can do this. Can we do this? Level set, did the thing. We looked awesome. And
we did. I thought we pulled it off.
Yeah, we absolutely did. And then, to your point, like, one of the things I really love about you, Orla, is that as much as I love you as a person and as much fun as you are, you're a freaking professional rock star too. Like, you're one of those people I get to like a lot personally and professionally. Like when they announced you as the emerging leader, I'm happy for you because I'm your friend, but I wasn't surprised. I was like, yes, that is a good person to pick because you really do a lot of amazing work. So we don't make this entire podcast, a rehashing of our drunken revelry. Tell our listeners, like, what is the work you do at CTYI?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started going to these conferences. I have two roles in my current job. So I'm assistant professor in the School of Inclusive and Special Education at my university, Dublin City University. And I'm also an academic program manager at Centre for Talented Youth Ireland. So CTYI has been around for 30 years in Ireland. We're currently the only formal organization that serves gifted and talented kids in the entire country. So gifted kids in Ireland, there's no kind of like policies or legislation. If you're lucky, your school provides maybe some services, but what our research shows is that it's pretty minimal. So if you're a gifted kid and you need an outlet or something, to go somewhere and meet other gifted kids, your options are literally just to come to us. In terms of my origin story with CTYI, so I was a student at CTYI when I was a teenager. That's something Matt and I have in common. We're both alums he's of CTY and Johns Hopkins and myself of CTY Ireland. And then I just needed a summer job one year when I was in college. I hadn't thought about CTY since I was a student. Just kind of wondered, in like Monsters Inc., where it's like they're always hiring in the mailroom. Like, it's like, I feel like they're always hiring at CTYI. Like, I'll apply and be a residential assistant. And I did. That summer was the summer that changed the kind of trajectory of my entire life because I really loved working with those kids and I really felt like I was making a difference. But one of the things that happened that year was that was the first year they were starting to have trans kids who were out on the program. Obviously, we assumed they've always been there, but they just weren't out at the time. And there was a situation where there was a trans boy who had just come out in the year. He had attended the previous year and his like other old gender, old name, everything. And he had come out. His parents were super supportive. It was all good. He was really excited because on the first day, he's this young trans boy who gets put into the boys group. And so he's really excited. That's such a validating moment. Except that somebody then came along and said, no, like you weren't this last year. So you got to go back to the girls group, which was so upsetting for him. But the group he was put into was mine. And I tell this story a lot that like this conversations I had with that kid that summer really had this massive impact on me. And I thought, okay, what could I do if I had some control in C2I? If I did something, what would it look like? And I thought about it a lot. And then they invited me back to a more senior position the following summer. I was finishing up my master's degree. I thought I was going to do a PhD on William Faulkner. My background is in English literature. I have no education or psychology background at all. My master's is in American literature. I was like, oh, here I go now for my PhD on Faulkner. Even though, I think there's been enough PhDs on Faulkner. I'm sure everybody has said all they have to say about him. But I was going to do that. And then, I don't know, that summer, Colm, who's our director still, Dr. Colm O'Reilly, he kind of asked me, like, what are you planning? I said, I'm thinking about doing this for a year, but I'm going to apply for PhDs. He said, no, like, why don't you come and work for us? We have a short contract for a maternity cover coming up. And so I said, yes. And that was 10 years ago this September. And they never got rid of me. And I became the residential coordinator. And I ended up with the power to make the changes that I had thought about when I was an RA. And so I wrote our LGBTQ policy. I consulted with external organizations. I built out what our residential program would look like. I changed how we train our staff in order to work with young LGBTQ, and particularly young trans and non-binary people who are just kind of coming into their own while they're on the summer program, especially. And so I kind of did all of that. And then that led into the research, of course. I'm very practice research symbiosis, like everything feeds back on itself. In 2023, then I got my doctorate in educational leadership. And my focus was on gifted LGBTQ kids and, what their experiences were like at CTYI and what their experiences were like in their own school in Ireland. And that's kind of what I've been working on for literally the last decade of my life.
Also, I don't know if you saw Jake's eyes bulge out of his head when you said, I'm getting my doctorate in Faulkner. Jake was like, as our resident humanities nerd, you were like,
okay, yeah. So I was like a big Southern literature fan. I really was. I had like I loved my master's degree. It was a great time, but yeah, I just didn't know, I'm like, I feel like when you're a girl, everybody is kind of like, you'll probably get you teaching, you'll probably went to teaching. And I always said, like, no, like, I just don't think I'm cut out for that. I think teaching is such an amazing profession. It's a vocation. It's like people who do it, it's so incredible. It's just not in what I was thinking about my skill set then at the time. And then I kind of found that actually maybe that's not it, but I am supposed to be connected with education because I'm very passionate about doing it and working with it and organizing. And how do we support these kids from a holistic standpoint? How do we make sure that they are growing socially and emotionally? And how can I facilitate that while then they're taking their academic classes as well?
I love that so much, especially as like through my experience. Like I also helped start like a rainbow club, like an LGBTQ support group at school, and like a lot of just queer students in general. And I know how it is in America and the perspective towards queer students. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what is the general queer experience like that you're noticing? And like, what do these kids in Ireland at least want to have people understand more?
Absolutely. So I think Ireland is unusual and separate from other countries in some ways. And then in other ways, I think globally, we've all been having the same experience for the last 6-ish years. So Ireland is unusual in that, like, Ireland did not decriminalize homosexuality until 1993. Up until 1993, it was still a criminal act to be a gay man. It was like old Victorian laws. The laws that put like Oscar Wilde in prison, like those kind of laws were still in place. And they overturned that in 1993. And then what followed that was about, 10 or 15 years of striving for equity in terms of like equality in the workplace, in terms of having being gay as something that you can't discriminate against. So like, the 9 kind of grounds for discrimination that you can't have in a workplace in Ireland. And then in 2015, we became the very first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage by public vote. So we had a referendum for that. So that was an incredible experience. The people who fought for that fought for a very long time. And of course, before that, there was also a lot of people working to have, say, if you've gotten married in a different country, to have your marriage recognized within Ireland. But to actually have a same-sex marriage in Ireland, 2015, we passed that by popular vote. I would say that in that way, it's very positive. However, Ireland has the worst healthcare for trans people in all of Europe. It is very, very difficult to access good healthcare if you are particularly if you're a young trans person at the early stages of your transition. It's very difficult to access good healthcare. A lot of people end up going abroad to get, medical interventions if they need them. So that's difficult. And also in the last, and this is where I think we are following the trend that we're seeing globally, which is that like everything got like so good in the last, like, say 20 years. And then the last 6, everything is going so backwards. So we're lucky in that legally, I guess, we're not going backwards. We're not seeing what the US is currently seeing, but we are seeing a rise in hate crimes, and specifically like LGBTQ focused hate crimes, but also unfortunately hate crimes generally, hatred towards migrants, refugees, immigrants, racism. We're seeing the same rise in people feeling a lot freer to say the horrible things that maybe they wouldn't have felt so comfortable saying out in public 10 years ago. Now they're kind of feeling a little bit more emboldened to say those things. And that's like in person and obviously online. So in terms of what is the queer experience like for an Irish young person, like it depends on so many factors, much like it does for everybody. What are your parents like? Do you have supportive friends? Do you have a supportive adult in your life generally? What's the climate like at your school? Do you live somewhere very urban or somewhere very rural? Is your family, do they have any other beliefs that might maybe conflict with, or that you feel might conflict with your identity? So that can all really depend. But what I found in my research, what I can say, is that of the LGBTQ gifted kids that I worked with and that I did the research with, their experience at CTYI was leagues better than their experience at school. Their experience at CTYI was that they knew supportive adults, that they found supportive friends, that they had activities that they could go to that felt kind of fun and exciting, but like maybe that referenced queer culture, and that for them felt like a much more positive experience than maybe their experience at their school did.
Is the public schools, sorry, I don't know much about the education system in Ireland, obviously, but
That's okay.
is the public schools generally accepting, and is it like the broad ideology is like queer people are welcome and it's fine, or is it more of like...
So it very much depends on a school by school basis. So we have public schools and we have private schools, but the majority of all schools in Ireland are, I think it's 75% of our post-primary schools, so 13 to 18, have a religious ethos. Say they're being kind of run by a religious order with a government entity. And for primary school, that's higher. That's about like 90% of schools and primary schools in Ireland. So 5 up to 12, there is an element of the Catholic Church there in managing the schools. But there are lots of schools who are religious run and still do not let that, have any bearing whatsoever on their support of the LGBTQ students who do attend. So it's very much on a school by school basis was the thing that I found as well. There are other kind of schools now, there are like community national schools, and there's another group who run several schools, and it's expanding a lot now, who are non-denominational, the Educate Together group, and they would be very focused and openly so about how they support diversity within their student body.
So listeners, you can see like why she's not just my friend, she's a professional rock star. I mean, just like you just downloaded so much information so quickly that we can all understand it. And I think, you can't do this work. You can't support kids without becoming an advocate in some way. I mean, we all stand up on our own 2 feet to shout out that our gifted kids need the education they deserve. But then you realize that it's so much more than just school. It's the person you're becoming. It's who you love. It's how you present in the world. And like you used the word holistic before, and it sounds much better coming from your mouth than it does from mine. It's like, why? How dare we stop in math class? Because being neurodivergent is who you are in all the ways that manifests.
Absolutely, yeah. And like so many of our kids who attend the program who are LGBTQ are also twice exceptional. We're seeing higher rates of twice exceptionality, if you will, in our LGBTQ kids, even than we are sometimes are in our general population. Someday I'll get like IRB like approval to actually do a study where I get to find out how many of our kids are LGBTQ. But that's obviously very hard to put through an ethics board. There's a lot of issues there. But I can say, like, from what I have been able to look at, particularly like for our trans and non-binary kids, the rate of twice exceptionality and how it appears in that group, it is higher than it is in our general population. So then, like, we're talking about, I know, Matt, like you talk a lot of it, like it's a whole person approach. How can I support you in your autism, in your giftedness, in your anything, if I can't also support the very basic part of your identity of like who you are as a human being and how you relate to the world around you.
And the number that I see quoted a lot here in the States is that somewhere between 38 and 70% of neurodivergent people are LGBTQ. So my shorthand for that is usually 1 out of 2. And when I think about my client base, right, and Jake, for the kids you see as well, 1 out of 2 kind of holds water. It's like, it does really feel like every other neurodivergent person I see is somehow queer, a member of the LGBTQ community. Honestly, I feel a little left out as a straight cishet dude. I'm like, man,
you're like the ultimate ally. I like to think of as like human beings that we're maybe the reason that happens is that when you're neurodiverse, you're more open to thinking about how your brain diverges from the so-called norm. Who invents these norms? They don't really exist, but we know how society perceives this as being different. And so sometimes I think that that has to be part of it, that like if you're already thinking, okay, well, I've already hopefully shunned this part of what somebody says is the normal way to act, be, and think, I'm also going to be open to having this other part of my life maybe be a little bit different, rather than thinking if I'm not going to box myself in terms of, you know, my abilities, whether I'm neurodiverse, I'm not boxing myself in there. Maybe I'm not going to box myself in terms of my gender and sexuality either.
Some of the interesting brain research here is the same part of the brain that does intelligence also does personality. So we know with our kids that part of the brain gets a lot more developmental energy earlier and it comes online a lot sooner. There's some evidence to suggest that, you know, if being a member of the queer community is who you are, it stands to reason that that part of your personality would have something to do with that.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like the hippocampus where you can point, it's like, here's the part of your brain that makes you
I know,
gay.
there's the gay part of the brain. I know.
We found it. Yay. Right.
And then, like, you know, so much of it as well is like, you know, you're thinking about what are the experiences that we have, you know, for a lot of queer people, when you decide to come out or how you, and of course, coming out it's a lifelong process. You never do it once, you do it a million times. You do it in every workplace. You do it when you meet somebody new. You do it when somebody has a wrong assumption about what your partner is when you say you're married. But the first part of coming out is coming out to yourself, you know, is thinking about these things. And is that how I feel, you know? And what really can help that, I think, spur that along is, are you around other queer people, or are you in queer positive spaces? I know from my own work, but equally from anybody I know in Gifted, a lot of the times those spaces do have more LGBTQ kids. So if these are your friends that you're making, maybe that is then having that effect that spurs you on a little more to think, that's how I feel too, and it's okay to feel like that.
Yeah, I know for me, like going to CTY as a kid helped me understand that I didn't have to hide who I was to make friends. Right. The first day of CTY, I called my mom and said, I don't have to pretend to be dumb here. That sounds a little arrogant, but I mean, there's so many parallels between the queer experience and the neurodivergent experience, right? What is passing in one space is masking in another.
Absolutely.
I put myself under a bushel at school. It's like, yes, professional wrestling sure is neat, other teens, right? Like, and then you go to CTY and other kids can quote chapter and verse on Pokemon, or, you know, they also read comic books. And it's just like, oh, it's so much more affirming to be myself. And then seeking those experiences in other places led me to musical theater. And that's where I started to interact with a lot more LGBTQ folks. I remember thinking like, oh, cool, that's a gay person. Oh, cool, that's a trans person. Oh, this person is bisexual. Oh, like it was really just like uploading all this information. And, you know, they say it's like, you know, like travel is, you know, a requisite for having an open mind. I think living more life experiences also gives you some of that open mind stuff, and meeting more people and treating anybody as a human being rather as like an abstract member of some community you don't like is, you know, that's where the empathy comes from and like the compassion there.
Yeah. And like for so many people, even like kids who come to CTI, like I know, and our staff who come in as well who work, you know, I don't present to them, particularly our staff for like the early staff development, if they have a trans or non-binary kid in their group, like I don't assume that these usually young college students have experiences working with, you know, trans or non-binary people. And so sometimes they do have questions. And I do always say it's important that, like, you know, we'll give you all this development. But I said, but ultimately you have to remember you're going to get to know this kid as a human being, as a person. Like within like a day or so, you're not going to even be thinking about, oh, I'm worried I'm going to say this wrong or I'm going to do this. Like you might be kind of considerate about that, but like ultimately you're not going to be thinking about solely focus on this one part of their identity for the entire 3 weeks. It's like you'll get to know them and you'll be more talking to them about, like, you're not going to be talking to them about their identity. You're probably going to be talking to them about comic books or like K-pop or, you know, like creative writing, like something that they're interested in.
That all reminds me so much of one of my like really close friends. He recently, within the past like year or two, transitioned and has a daughter who is, I think she's 10 now, and is also trans. And watching like the family dynamic grow and build together, and then also seeing this younger girl completely come into herself, and like all of the community broadly around her is like incredibly supportive, seeing her like dive into her interests. She was just talking about like every single episode of Bob's Burgers to me like the other day, and just like, what's this episode, what's this one, I can tell you like this happens in this episode, and it is season 3 episode like 4, and the title is this, and I'm going to give you the entire synopsis of it. And like seeing her in that way, and then also hearing the stories of how she was before she started transitioning, it's like a completely different person in the best possible way, because she's more herself. And
yeah,
like I can only imagine how freeing and validating that is for the kids that you see at CTYI.
oh, absolutely. And like I always have to tell them, like, when we're the most ourselves, like, you know, that's a gift to the world around us, or to everybody. Like, I love seeing people who are so passionate about one topic that they can like list everything out for you. They're like, you want to know this fact about this? That's, yes, of course they do. Like, tell me everything, because I think there's nothing more special than watching somebody talking about their special interests. Like, you know, it's so fun and funny, and like you're laughing with them, because like this is great. Like, let's enjoy maybe how ludicrous your special interest is. Like, that's even better. If I know nothing about it, tell me everything, buddy. I want to know. And so we do get to see when the kids have made that initial, you know, a point of where they're, you know, I want you to call me by a different name. I want you to use a different pronoun when you speak to me. Like, that's just the beginning for them, you know, and then we get to see them blossom into the whole of their person over like, and sometimes it's literally 2 or 3 weeks. That's what always really got to me in some of the qualitative part of my research study, was that they would write in these amazing stories of like, oh, it, you know, changed my life, and I got to have so much support for the first time. But sometimes they would say this specific, they would say it was like the best 2 weeks of my life, or like that 3 weeks changed my entire life. And I have to think, yeah, but that was like 2 weeks out of the year. Like, you know, all those other weeks that you weren't there, you know, you want to hope that they take those positive experiences and that it stays with them. And in fairness, actually, for a lot of the people that I interviewed, the gifted LGBTQ former students that I interviewed, the positive experiences they had and that coming into themselves, they did actually take it with them. So they might have like left C2I at the end of the 2 weeks, but a lot of them actually took it back with them to their school, and it like emboldened them, it empowered them. You know, they felt that they were more able to be themselves in other spaces because they had already been so accepted for themselves in this one space.
And I mean, and I, like I said, that was my foundational experience at CTY. It's like, help me learn who I am so I can bring that goodness back to my regular life, which is not this beautiful, sacred, special, nerdy place of awesomeness, right? Like, but you know, one of my favorite statistics, research studies, is that if you can give a gifted kid something to look forward to, some space that they know they can return to, that affirms them and fills them up, they get happier, they do better at school, they make more friends, because there is that light at the end of the tunnel, right? There's that, you know, the kids in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe were happy because they know they could always go back to Narnia. But so many kids are out there and they never find that. They never find their Narnia or Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. I'm still like catching myself to not use Hogwarts as a reference now.
I know.
Yeah, we hate it. Thanks.
It's been reclaimed.
Right. Yeah. Camp Half-Blood. That's another good one.
I know. We actually, we used to run like Harry Potter activities as well. And then, I don't know though, sometimes I have seen some activities still do it. Like, we had kids request it maybe last year, and the person who did it so well because they just pretended that it had sprung up from nowhere, and there was no origin story, and we don't know anything about the person who created it. And they kind of enjoyed that out of it. But we've kind of cut out all of that as well. It's sad to see a public figure who has so much money and so much influence waste so much time about something that's nothing to do with her, that will never affect her life, ever. Will never, ever affect her life. Where a trans person goes to the bathroom, it just won't. And it's terrible to see somebody with so much power and influence and money put it into just the worst places.
I feel like you could say that across the board for so many people.
I know.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what's the trans agenda? Survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
make it, literally, like.
And it's funny, like one of the first trans kids I ever saw, their way of coming out to me is they showed me a piece of headcanon from Harry Potter that was, there's a kid in Gryffindor Tower and they've been assigned to the male dorm wing. Now, and like in the story, if a guy tries to go up to the girls' wing, the stairs turn into a slide and they slide them back down.
Right, yeah.
And in this headcanon, this assigned male at birth character walks in and then tries to go up the stairs to the girls' wing and it doesn't change. And the kid goes, I knew it. And that was how this kid came out to me. And I was just like I'm getting chills right now thinking about, like, it was just such a powerful moment of like, you took a thing that mattered a lot to you and you found a way to explore a part of yourself within that universe. And then the confidence that came from that exploration, you brought out into the real world. And that's the power of these communities and fan fictions and fandoms, right? Like,
I think you've hit on something really interesting there, Matt, that like comes up with us sometimes. And it's actually this idea of permission, that sometimes when young queer people feel like they nearly need permission to, they're like, I'm not too sure. And so one of the biggest things, like thinking about that kid, like it's like the permission, like some other external source is telling you, no, you are trans. For me, we see this huge thing for our kids when they come into us and it's the first time, and we're going to be the first people that they ever tell their new name, their new pronouns to. Like sometimes there is a real, like that they're almost not telling you, they're kind of asking you. They're kind of saying like, I think it's this. And we have to say, yeah, that's fine. And also it's okay. Like, sometimes they'll say, oh, I think it's this, but I'm not 100% sure of my pronouns yet. We're like, that's totally fine. Like, it's your business. You tell us, we can change it. We'll let you, you let us know. We'll let whoever needs to know. And if somebody doesn't need to know, they don't need to know. And that's fine. Or even we had like, kid maybe who might change their name. They might have changed their name one summer and then they come in and it's another name again. And so that's fine. Like, that's not my business. That's your business. Like, it's your name. It's what we're going to call you. But I have seen that there's huge power sometimes for those kids when they come in, because we're the first adults who are saying, this is totally fine and we'll do whatever you want. You're leading this.
Yeah.
And I think that they get a lot from it. So that's a really interesting kind of this concept of like permission for these kids to be themselves is kind of an interesting idea.
I love that. And, and for all the parents and educators and mental health professionals out there listening to this, you're probably sitting there wondering, why do all these kids come out to me? It's one of my favorite questions to ask teachers. It's like, how many people in this room have had a kid come out to them and like people raise their hands? I was like, how many people have had more than one, more than 5, more than 10? And it's always the librarians, the theater teachers, the art teachers, the music teachers. And it's like things that kids connect to deeply. They show their whole selves in those spaces. And then they show like every part of themselves. And teachers are like, I don't know what it is about me. I'm like, you create a space where a kid can grant permission, right? Can step in there, because kids may not always have the words for this, but they know who their safe adults are. They know who those people are. And honestly, it's analogous to meeting somebody at a conference and like instantly knowing you're one of my people.
Yeah.
In my wildest dreams, I didn't think you and I would be this close and be this good friends. And I'm thankful every day for it. But I was like, whether we know each other for the next 3 days or the next 30 years of our lives, this is one of my people.
Yeah.
For the adults out there, if you put that energy into the world, that's a gift, right? And lean into it.
100%. 100%. Actually, I know we were laughing about our origin story of that conference, but actually I can tell you the exact moment that I was like, oh, you're one of my people. This is a good person. And it was when I messaged you on like Facebook Messenger and I said, someone had approached me about doing a talk. And I didn't usually do this. And I wanted to ask you, and Irish people hate asking things about money. And I wanted to ask you about like, I don't know how to set my rate or something like that. And Matt phoned me from, I think, Newark Airport.
I was on the airport. Yep.
Now, this is hilarious. But like literally was on the phone with me, walking onto the airplane, like storing his bag, maintaining this conversation with me. Like he easily could have said, I'm about to board a flight. Like, I'll call you in a couple of hours or I'll text you later. He said, no, I got time. What am I doing? I'm going to get in the flight. I thought that was so kind. Like that's somebody who really would like take the time out for such a like kind of an insignificant query, but to still give it that much kind of time and thought. And that was now a moment that I was like, yeah, Matt is a really good guy.
I can second that also.
Thank you.
Little praise for you and your own podcast. You don't deserve it now.
ADHD is a hell of a thing. I'll say. I was like, I can do both at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I'm often the most privileged person in the spaces I walk into, right? To me, it's like so many people give me hands up. The least I can do is turn around and give other people behind me a hands up. But like, you represent a voice that needs to be elevated. I want you to have a bigger platform. Once again, not just because I'm your friend, right? But because like the research you do is so important to these kids. And I mean, honestly, not to be melodramatic, but like, it's literally saving lives. We know what the mental health rates are in the LGBTQ population. We know what they are in the neurodivergent population. If you carve out a space for a kid to feel seen and authentic, you're giving that kid something to live for.
Absolutely. And I do appreciate you saying that, but like, I do have to emphasize that, like, it's not a solo effort. It takes so many people with me at C2II. Like it takes my colleagues being supportive. Like, I'm very lucky that I work somewhere that is so supportive of what I do, that has really like given me the foundations to get to go and do the things that I do. Because I do hear sometimes from teachers when I go to these conferences as well, who don't work in supportive spaces and who are not in a school environment or a state or a district where they're able to do the level of things that like I get to do, because I'm in a very privileged position as well, to have everybody around you be supportive and to be on the same message and to want to do the same things and to want to contribute their own experience, knowledge, and expertise to help these kids. That is a very privileged position to be in. So like, I do want to acknowledge that, because I do, as I say, I do go to these conferences, and it's happening more and more now, especially in the States, where people will say, oh, I'd love to do what you're doing, but I would be fired. I would lose my job. Yeah. When I think about those people, I do really just think about how those are the type of teachers that I want to be able to try and help. They're the people you want to be giving like ideas to. But I think it always comes down to the same thing. It's like what Matt, you said, it's just the kids always find the helpers. It's like that Mr. Rogers thing about the helpers. You look for the people who are helping. Kids can sense that. They know who somebody is. And sometimes it's just that they're kind. Sometimes it's just that they're a good person. They might not know that they're also LGBTQ. They might not be LGBTQ at all. But sometimes it's kids just can sense where that kindness is coming from and that place of acceptance.
And let me ask one more question in this, because I think that it feels really important. We've used the word ally a couple of times in this pod, and some people include ally within the LGBTQIAA2. There's a lot of things I always get confused. But some people include as one of those A's ally. And to me, it's like, I don't feel like that should, I'm not a member of that community, so I don't feel like I get to make that decision. But like, to me, it's like, ally is not a word you can claim for yourself. It's something, it's like a nickname. It has to be given.
Yeah.
Like, I can raise my hand, I'm an ally, but like, I think that's not, I don't think it's something I can say for myself. Like, what to you makes somebody an ally?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And the concept of like the changing letters of the acronym as well. Like, I also wouldn't include ally in the acronym, but that's because I think the whole point of being an ally is to be outside of the group that you're trying to help. I don't think you should need to be included within the acronym in order to treat people decently and with kindness. I think that's the point of allyship, is that you're outside of it. I think being an ally is also something like, in a way, it's kind of something you earn as well, because, I think it's well and good for somebody to say they're an ally, but how are you showing me that you're an ally? I want to know, are you someone who is comfortable having a difficult conversation? Are you going to call out somebody or a situation that is homophobic or transphobic? And you don't have to do that even in a dramatic way. Like, are you going to have those small, quiet conversations that change people's minds? Are you going to be the person who helps that kid when they come to you? Are you going to be someone who seeks to like know a little bit more and educate yourself? And then even if you don't know, you're open to it and you're not defensive of like, well, like, oh, sure, I don't even know about that. You know, in my day, we didn't have any of that. You know, are you going to be open to like, okay, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know about that, but I'm going to learn. You know, what way are you going to support these kids? Like, there's politics involved in it as well. Like, I'm, you know, terribly sorry to say, but if you're going to vote for laws that are going to completely upend my entire life, you are not an ally. And you cannot tell me that you love me if you're going to vote for people who would literally have me wiped off the face of the earth. I really do believe that. And I know there are a lot of very difficult conversations sometimes that people have to have with family. But yeah, for me, it's really about how are you going to show me in your actions that you're an ally? Not only in the times when it's easy for you to be an ally, but like in the times when it's hard as well. How are you going to put yourself out there?
I think that's a great definition. And I think we should hang on to that, right? Because ultimately, it really is about actions. It's easy to say something, it's hard to live it. You know, I have this quote above my desk. It's like, you can't call yourself an ally unless you're getting hit by the rocks that people are throwing at the people you're trying to protect. I was just giving a talk about hope the other day, and I opened that talk by talking about the last death threat I got online for posting something that supported trans kids. And my therapist was like, you must be doing something right if you're pissing people off this much. I'm like, what a weird way to think about that. But you're 100% right. Throw those rocks at me, let them hit me, because you know what? I can take it. And if those rocks hit one fewer queer kid, then I'm doing my job. That's what
110%. And that's true allyship.
All right. Well, we're just awesome. Look how awesome. We're very awesome. Okay. So I could talk to you all day, obviously. Start to wrap up the podcast. Jake, do you want to take the first wrap up question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so curious what your answer is going to be. But Orla, my question for you is, what's your favorite word and why?
Oh my God, what's my favorite word and why? Why wouldn't you send this in advance? This is like, you know, in Las Culturistas when they say, what was the culture that made you say culture was for you? Okay, I'm going to have to think of, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to pick my favorite word around what we've been talking about, because that's a good, easy answer. But of everything we've talked about, and when I think of everything in like LGBTQ culture and community, it's the word queer. I think the reclamation of the word queer has been a very powerful part of, you know, we have like queer literature, queer theory, queer communities. I love it as an umbrella term. I love that it can be about your sexuality or your gender. It can be like both. It can be neither. I like that people use it because they want to be political about not ascribing to, you know, identities that are more easily defined. And I like what it represents generally within everything to do with our community. And I identify as queer myself. I often like to say, like, I'm actually queer, but I'm kind of like culturally like a lesbian. So like if you're in astrology, it'd be like, you know, queer sun, but like lesbian rising. But that's just like fun jokes that I make for myself. So I'm going to say that that's my favorite word and why.
Love that so much.
Great answer.
And I love the explanation for it even more.
All right. My question is going to be a little different.
Okay.
If you could pick any superhero to have on speed dial, who would it be and why?
Okay. Any superhero to have on speed dial. Okay. She's not a superhero, but she is supernatural. Can I get away with that?
Absolutely.
Because it's kind of also when I think about it, somebody says, what superpower would you have? I have only ever wanted one thing, and this is really shallow. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, okay? She was able to click her fingers and change her full outfit. And we never knew, like, was there an unlimited store of those outfits? Did she just think of the outfit in her head? But she could click her fingers and immediately change her clothes, and they would be like the most amazing clothes you've ever seen. If I could have someone on speed dial, it's whoever is running Sabrina the Teenage Witch's wardrobe system. And that's what I would have.
Just call them up, be like, I need a new outfit. Go.
Yeah, I want to click my fingers and like, this is what I'm picturing. It's like something like this, that, and the other. Did it cost her money? Like, we just don't know these things.
I mean, I've never thought about the philosophical implications of Sabrina the Teenage Witch's outfit changes, but you're right.
Oh my God.
Where did they come from?
Where did they live? Where were the clothes? Was there a big wardrobe in the sky somewhere? She wasn't paying for them. Was she visualizing what it would look like? Could she look at a magazine and then click her fingers and be wearing it? And I think she could. They were always gorgeous.
If I'm Abercrombie and Fitch, am I like, why does our stock keep disappearing? Like,
yeah, where are they going? I don't know.
Or is she just creating matter completely out of nowhere?
What is the science? Okay, we do a class in C2I called Superhero Science. I'm going to email the instructor and be like, I need you to include this and explain to me the physics of how this would work.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And then you're going to have to live stream that class for us because now I desperately need to know. Like Jake opened by saying, like, no one ever wondered why Arnold had a football head. It was just accepted. But now I'm wondering why Arnold had a football head. And now I'm wondering how the hell Sabrina got these clothes. So, like, my whole childhood is unraveling in big questions right now.
I know.
That's a good podcast episode. We made them think. Wow. All right. So, Orla, now that I'm contemplating metaphysical implications of childhood witch TV, what would you send our audience home with? What should they know that we haven't talked about yet?
I think we've hit on everything that's really important to me, which is just about thinking of these gifted kids as whole people. And it really is that, like, if you're somebody who supports, gifted kids, and you're thinking about that you do have to think of their whole identity, and that, like, fundamentally it comes down to, like, how you respect and see them as human beings when you're working with LGBTQ young people. And that I think that there are lots of ways to be an ally. They're not always going to be as straightforward for everyone. They're not always going to be that you're going to do what I did, in terms of, like, changing systems and staff development, and that you're able to have kids who come out to you and you have systems for that. For you in your space, it literally could just be about being a kind listening ear. And that's enough sometimes. If this kid just knows that they have one person who believes in them, who acknowledges them and validates them and affirms them for who they are at their core, that's enough to get them through to the next part. So I think it's thinking about that even if you're in a position where you don't feel you can do the big gestures, you can do the small things too. And it really does just start with being kind and taking these kids as they are.
Well, and what a message to walk away with, guys. So, we can see why you're an emerging leader, but I'm just so grateful for your scholarship, for your friendship, for our partnership. You are a delight. And I'm so lucky you're in my life and our lives now that you're part of the podcast family. So for all of us here at Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, thanks for another great episode. Thanks for learning with us and learning from us and for trusting us with your time. Jake, send us out, bud.
As always, it's great to be here. Take care, everybody. Orla, thank you so much. And especially for all the topics and just the deep dive that we really went into, because, like, this is an important topic for me as well. So I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. But take care, everybody.
Bye. Nerding Out on Neurodiversity is brought to you by Dr. Matt Zakreski and the team at the Neurodiversity Collective. To learn more about the Neurodiversity Collective or to be a guest on the podcast, please visit our website at www.theneurodiversitycollective.com/podcast. Audio and production by Jake Noonan. Show your support by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and telling your friends about us. Our Instagram and social media handles are at #NoonPodcast, NOON podcast. Your support is appreciated and keeps us going. All discussions presented on this podcast are strictly for informational purposes, awareness, and understanding. The advice presented is not and should not be considered to be therapeutic in nature. If you have any mental health questions, please contact your provider. All rights reserved.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.